The Bronco has run out of juice. It's over. The Los Angeles chase is done, and O.J. Simpson has passed away, leading the way to plenty of funny-ass memes. I will come out and say admittedly. So we'll talk about what's happening there, what happened with that, what he passed away from, and some of the cultural impact of O.J. Simpson. In other news, speaking of police stories and chases, a Chicago police shooting involves 4 police officers and 96 shots into a suspect. I'm going to talk a bit about this one here, why I think that this rises to the level of importance in our election cycle, and some of the math questions that I have about this as well, because something just doesn't seem to math to me. But we'll be talking about that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. Inflation is up. Again, we have gone 3.5% year over year again, but this is on top of about 6.5% versus the 7.5% from the year before. So it's still going up, and it's going up hotter than I expect. And your groceries are getting much, much more expensive. So we'll go over some of that, where we go with that, and what we do with that. And House Republicans block a FISA bill miraculously, and Mike Johnson flips his position on FISA now that he has the speakership power. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, find some friends, get some people in here, because this show only grows by word of mouth, of course. And check yes, Juliet, are you with me? Rain is falling down on the sidewalk. I won't go until you come outside. Check yes, Juliet. Kill the limbo. I'll keep tossing rocks at your window. There's no turning back for us tonight. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So I gotta do some troubleshooting on my end, and I don't know if any of the audio issues have bled through to the stream at this point, because I have not had a chance to go back and listen to anything. But since just about Tuesday night's Contemporary, first it was just these headphones, I thought it was, where I was getting a little bit of rough come through the headphones because they're broken and there's probably a little bit of damage to the cord coming in between there. But I put my other headphones on, my other wireless ones, and they're giving me the same issue. So I don't know if my my Bluetooth adapter is gone to shit, or if there's an actual interference somewhere between the Bluetooth and the headphones. I know that sometimes that can be a possibility, or if just I've got a sound driver that's gone bad. And I know you guys will come back and tell me if there is a problem out there. So I don't think it's bleeding through to the stream. I have not listened to the last stream, but it's something that I've been dealing with, and it's something I'm concerned about, because I do want to give the best quality program that I can to you guys, because, well, I appreciate the fact that you guys keep coming back over and over again, week after week, and even subbing, hanging out, or giving gift subs, as the Mogwai has done in the past before. So, yeah, that's, Mogwai says haven't noticed, so okay, then it's probably my either Bluetooth adapter or my headphones themselves. I don't even know if I have any wired headphones right now that I could go and try to eliminate with. I don't think I have any wired headphones anymore. I could probably go see if I can find this. I do have a set of wired headphones. I'm going to dig those out over the after I'm done with the stream and see if there is some continuity there. See if it does the same thing as they've been doing over here. Because, yeah, I could go rule out the Bluetooth adapter right there. And if it is the adapter, because it's done it on two sets of headphones, then that's probably where it's going to be, and I'll just have to run to Amazon and grab a new one of those. It's so weird seeing some of these things with no moving parts actually go bad. So, I know, having turned a wrench for as many years as I did, I'm used to things that move going bad, but it's what happens there. The Mogwai says, wired headphones, you have to plug it in? That's like a baby's toy. Everybody seems to know that I love Back to the Future, because that's one of the most quoted movies on this show. Speaking of the show, I wanted to address something right off the top, especially because we do Fallout Fridays over here on the video game channel. But I wasn't going to do it. I'm going to come right out and say right off the bat, I was not going to do it. I was going to wait. I was going to see the reviews. I was going to see if other people were disappointed before I gave in to Amazon and gave them my money. But I broke down, partially with some pressure from CatPants13, friend of the show. If you like Fallout, go follow CatPants13 over on Twitch, because she pretty much exclusively plays Fallout. But some pressure there. Like, she got together with a lot of her other followers and watched it as it was coming out at 6 p.m. Central Time. I didn't do that because I was streaming last night. I was playing Final Fantasy X. But after I got done with that, while I was waiting to go to bed, I watched the first episode and part of the second episode of the Fallout series. I am going to neglect to put that on things I like and things that I hate until I'm further through the series. But one of the things I can say, after having seen the first maybe hour and 20 minutes of the series, is there is evidence that the developers have at least played a Fallout game. Like, they're not doing something like the Super Mario Brothers movie or Hitman or a bunch of other, or The Last of Us for that matter, a bunch of other adaptations where they know nothing about the source material, they've never played the game, they have no idea what's going on in the universe or anything else. They are at least, at this point, attempting to stay friendly to the lore to the extent that I can see. We'll see how that goes down the episode list. I want to be excited for this because I'm such a big Fallout fan. I mean, literally, I have the crest of the Brotherhood of Steel in the back window of my pickup truck. But it's Amazon. You have to understand that I'm expecting to be disappointed by this because they screw a lot of things up with their agenda. So I don't know. I thought it was okay for the first part. I want to see what they're going to do with it more. It does appear that this is going to be a later installment. They're not going to try to prequel it. That was one of the things I was worried about. And I'm not going to give away any of my concerns about it right now because that would be giving away spoilers, and I'm not going to do that. But just know that there were some issues that I had with it and the way that they handled it as well. I would recommend, it's not so bad, at least out of the pilot, that you're going to walk away disappointed and mad at me for doing so. I would recommend giving it a watch and drawing your own conclusions. There is a gratuitous amount of gore. Duh, it's Fallout. There is a very gratuitous amount of gore. The art direction and the props are true to form. Maybe a little bit small in the stim packs. That would be my only concern with that. But yeah, that art direction is good. A couple different canonicities that I have a problem with. But I mean, for the most part, again, my biggest worry is it was going to be a bunch of Hollywood people who had never played a Fallout game trying to make this thing. And that does not appear to be the case. They know what they're working with. And I appreciate that a lot. But that is enough rant that I have for what's going on there. Let's check in with the live chat. And we got to talk about some news because we've got a bunch of it here. And I kind of want to finish out Final Fantasy X on Saturday night after work. So I'm probably going to do a pop-up video game stream, especially if we can get done with all of this here tonight. And admittedly, I did add a lot to the stack because we only had 16 tabs before, and now we have 32. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to get down to the news. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as Overruled with KTZed and The Daily Ignoramus, two very close friends of mine, people I appreciate very much in my life, so go check them out. It's always a fun time on both streams, and even if I'm not chatting in The Daily Ignoramus, I'm almost always there through a headphone of some sort. With Overruled, maybe not as much because it's harder to get a live stream while I'm driving, and at least every other week KTZed is streaming while I'm driving, and it's hard to keep a pin on that, but definitely do go check both of those out. It's going to be a great time for both of you. I promise. I can attest to both of them. So go and check that out. Give KTZed some money so she can give the dog some treats. It's always a great thing, and we're going to get into the news and get started. Let's check the live chat real quick. Oh, I didn't close this out before, or since my Final Fantasy stream. Mogwai says, I can finally mark myself safe from getting murdered by OJ. I've been worried about that since 1994. Yeah, we'll be talking about that. Mogwai says, I'll tell all my friends about your show, but first, what's a friend? That's something you got to figure out on your home. On your own, rather. Wired headphones, yeah, we had that comment. Yeah, that was Back to the Future 2, you are right. That was Elijah Wood, by the way, who made that quote. I would have pressured you to today. No spoiler, and I know that your movie knowledge is limited, but I love the Die Hard reference. I probably missed that one. And I'm not going to lie, because I've never seen Die Hard. Every Christmas I say is going to be the Christmas I see Die Hard, and then Christmas comes and passes, and I never see Die Hard. This was going to be the Christmas, but I know I had so much family stuff going on, especially being close to family again, that I couldn't. I was okay with the gore until the foot scene. It's Fallout. It's gratuitous. And I think I was half falling asleep during the foot scene, so I wasn't quite sure what was going on with that one. I'll have to go back and rewatch that scene because I remember that the foot was there and was removed. I just don't remember how or why. Like, I barely registered seeing what was inside the boot, and I couldn't figure out what was there. So I'm going to go back and check that again probably tonight after stream. But yeah, especially the vault scene, the gratuitous score there. That was good. I like that. It fit right in line with the Fallout game. And Dual Helix over there says, sounds fine to me. Okay, that's good. So, I mean, at least it's just for me, and it's just for the background music. But I was hearing it all night through the Final Fantasy stream last night too, and I'm like, if this is something on my sound card going bad, we got to get this fixed, because we stream through the sound card, and we cannot have that static and everything going through the headphones. We can't do that. That's bad. Alright, anyway, let's get into it. Let's get started. On the news scene, we're going to start with the title card, of course, tonight. O.J. Simpson is dead after cancer battle. He was 76 years old when he passed away. There's going to be some spice for this, and I'm going to leave some spice with this one too. But let's get into it. From Olivia Land and Emily Crane over at the New York Post. O.J. Simpson, the once beloved NFL superstar and Hollywood actor who was acquitted in a 1995 murder trial that gripped the nation, died at his Las Vegas home on Wednesday. He was 76. Simpson, whose fame, fortune, and legacy were forever changed despite being cleared by the Los Angeles jury of killing his ex-wife and her male friend, was dubbed the trial of the century, had been battling prostate cancer. On April 10th, their father, Orenthal James Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer, his family announced. On social media Thursday, he was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. Were some of those Nicole Brown's children? I'm asking because I legitimately don't know the answer. I don't know if they had kids or not together. Nicknamed the Juice, Simpson was one of the most popular athletes of the late 60s and 70s. A Heisman Trophy winner during his days at the University of Southern California, the running back played 11 NFL seasons. 9 with the Buffalo Bills. He won 4 NFL rushing titles, rushed for 11,236 yards over his career, scored 76 touchdowns, and was featured in 5 Pro Bowls. So, I mean, the guy was good on the field. But unfortunately, I was born in 1984, and that's not anything that I know about. Because I didn't start watching football until 1992. I was part of the history of the game, Simpson once said of his Hall of Fame career. If I did nothing else in my life, I'd made my mark. Simpson was quickly parlayed his NFL success into show business achievements, such as appearing in the acclaimed TV miniseries Roots, and films such as The Naked Gun, which I have also not seen, by the way. That's on at least one of my playlists, though. He also famously became a pitchman for brands such as Hertz Car Rentals. So Tom Brady is following in his footsteps. So Tom Brady is doing Enterprise commercials, not Hertz. But athletic popularity and Hollywood fame came crashing down when he was charged with horrific slashing murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman in LA in 1994. Live TV coverage of his arrest after a slow-speed chase in his white Ford Bronco became infamous. Yeah, that was so infamous that it was in Shrek, by the way. I forgot about that. Somebody posted it out on X earlier, and I saw the scene again, and I'm like, oh yeah, a white Bronco heading eastbound. I don't know why Ford cut production on that model either, instead of using that as an advertisement. Because that should have been the advertisement right there, what we see on the screen. For those of you listening back on the audio platform, we've got the famous scene of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 squad cars, 12, following the white Bronco. His murder the following year was a tabloid and media sensation that mesmerized the country as the former football star's dream team of high-profile lawyers tried to refute a seemingly damning stack of evidence. In addition to courtroom bulldogs Robert Shapiro and Johnny Cochran, the team included Robert Kardashian, whose daughter Kim parlayed her own sex tape into infamy into a reality television empire. And if we all remember the good things that O.J. Simpson did throughout his life, throughout his career, the charity that he did before, we had to decide whether or not he did the thing or not. We do have to still lay the blame where blame is due. The reason that so much of our popular culture lives are inundated with the Kardashians is because of OJ. Nobody would have known who Kris Jenner was. I'm sure she probably wouldn't have married Bruce before Bruce became Caitlyn. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think Bruce Jenner would have even been that popular if it not been for this right here. I remember the trial. We were in middle school, by the way. In 6th grade. And our middle school felt it appropriate to stop. We were on lunch. And play the verdict over the intercom. In a small town middle school in west central Wisconsin. That's how influential this was. And I mean, we'd all heard it constantly on the bus back and forth. So, yes, he has passed away. I wonder what that conversation is like right now, wherever they both wound up. Do you think he's seen Ron and Nicole yet? Do you think they're talking in the afterlife right now? What do you think they're saying? The Mogwai says, the disease has been seen looking on golf courses for the real cancer. Yes, okay, they are Nicole's kids. See, and again, I didn't know any of that situation. I didn't know if they had any kids together or not. The Cancer wrote a book called What If I Did It? Nice. I don't know what's the worst crime, the murders of making Kardashians famous. Well, I'll tell you this, what I've been enjoying more than anything else out of this entire thing has been the memes. I've seen White Bronco memes, I've seen if the glove does not fit, you must have quit memes. I have seen so many, but The Onion, which usually I read from the B, but The Onion got honorable mention today. From The Onion, O.J. Simpson allowed to remain living after coffin does not fit. With onlookers gasping as the former football star made a big show of being too big for the casket, O.J. Simpson was reportedly allowed to remain alive on Thursday after his coffin didn't fit. "If the coffin does not fit, you must let him live a bit," said O.J. eulogizer Tommy Loughran. Nice, I like that. Who advocated for Simpson to continue living despite evidence that the coffin had shrunk after previously getting wet. Any DNA found in the casket that appears to be Mr. Simpson's, I believe, was a result of contamination. It would be existential malpractice to allow Mr. Simpson to die knowing full well that this coffin was not made for him. At press time, Simpson went on a media blitz promoting his escape from death. I love it. I love it. That's hilarious. But there we go. O.J. Simpson has passed. Enjoy a few more days of memes. And now, after I'm done laughing out loud, now we get to go back into dark stuff. So, I would typically not leave this in. I would have ignored this entirely, well, like most crime in Chicago, just to ignore it entirely. But the fact of the matter is if this does get picked up, and I don't think this story is going to make headline mainline news. I don't think we're going to see BLM riots over this now, per se. I think that there is something bigger that's getting cooked up, ready to be watched and overanalyzed and protested over and everything else. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something bigger being cooked up. But I think this is going to be the one that's going to be like Breonna Taylor if they do decide to drag out BLM during the 2024 election cycle, and that is the fact that it'll be out in the news and people will be able to see it, but this will be the one that comes back as the anecdote to say that this is systemic after the one that they decide to publicize more than anything else. But we're going to read from WTTW. That's a PBS station, by the way, which means that they've got that donate button over there just like NPR does, because this news, and possibly some propaganda, is brought to you with support from several local advertisers, a couple national advertisers, the federal government, and the state government of Illinois, and from viewers like you. Let's read, though. 4 Chicago police officers fired at Dexter Reed 96 times in 41 seconds after he shot an officer in the arm, according to COPA. Now, some of this, I don't know how much this maths. And I looked into this. The standard issue police pistol for Chicago PD, there are a couple different ones that they can use, but the most common, they mostly use SIGs, a 6-hour P380. Which I actually made a very, very stupid tweet earlier, or X I should say earlier, pointing out that didn't math because that only comes with a 10-round magazine. Because I'm a moron and I didn't read far enough in the line that showed that was only for the 45 chambered models. The 9mm models, which are standard issue for police officers because, well, they want to be able to buy as much ammo in bulk as they can. The 9mm models can have a 17, 21, or 32 round magazine. Now, that is enough ammunition if all 4 officers had a 32 round magazine, but I suspect that that's pretty rare. I don't own a SIG, full disclosure, so I don't know how common it is to have a 32 round mag. But typically with police handguns, you're running a 17 because you don't want the extended mag out past the handle. You want that to be able to stay smooth flush in your holster as you go. And again, I will fully come out and say I could be wrong about that. I suspect they all had 17 round mags, which 17 times 4 is 68. Which means at least one of them would have had to mag dump and reload to get to 96 shots. I have a lot of questions about this particular story. And I'm not denying that cops in Chicago shot a black kid. By any stretch of the imagination. I know that's distinctly possible. Let's read from Matt Masterson and Heather Sharon. But not Heather Sharona. This is not my Sharona. I am going to not do the video, by the way. I will put this article in the Discord, but I know how stringent and stingy YouTube can get about their glorification of violence. So I'm not going to run this video on YouTube. If we were Rumble exclusive, I might do it, but I'm not going to do it on YouTube. Let me put that into general chat for you guys. You guys could go check that out if you would like. I'm going to be watching it after stream. Chicago police officers fired nearly 100 shots in less than a minute after Dexter Reed appeared to have shot first during a fatal traffic stop in Humboldt Park last month, according to the police oversight officials. The Civilian Office of Police Accountability, or COPA, on Tuesday released body cam footage showing a fatal shooting of Reed by Chicago police during a March 21st traffic stop in the 3800 block of West Ferdinand. Again, another part of the reason I think that this is going to be revisited after the one that they try to publicize. So, in a few months, when they have the kneel on the neck or something that got caught on camera by a cell phone bystander and totally wasn't prepared or, what's the word I'm looking for? Pre-planned. Then they're going to come back and dig this one back up. On the 3800 block of West Ferdinand, Reed had been pulled over for purportedly not wearing a seatbelt. COPA, in a statement, said preliminary evidence appears to confirm that Reed fired the first before officers responded by firing 96 shots in a matter of 41 seconds. The agency has recommended to CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling that 4 of the officers involved be relieved of their police powers during the investigation. I believe that should still be standard practice, especially in a municipality like Chicago. Each use of deadly force must be evaluated by examining the totality of circumstances, including the officer's actions prior to the use of force, COPA's first deputy chief administrator, Ephraim Eddy, said in a statement. The CPD, in a statement on Tuesday, said it's cooperating fully with COPA's ongoing investigation. We cannot make a determination on the shooting until all the facts are known and the investigation has concluded, the statement reads, although, well, that's never stopped anybody before. Mayor Johnson called the footage of Reed's death deeply disturbing in a hastily scheduled appearance at City Hall where he was flanked by Andrea Kirsten, the head of COPA, and Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, who somehow still has a job. I don't know how or why, but I have a lot of questions about this one. I don't know that this is going to come out to be exactly what we expect it to be, and this might not resurface at all, but given the fact that CNN has a bookmark about it, the Associated Press does, the New York Post does, I'm thinking this is not going to be the last time we've heard of this. Let's do a quick description of what the body cam footage shows from CNN. Omar Jimenez and Holly Yan reporting. Newly released body cam footage reveals the mayhem that unfolded in a residential neighborhood when Chicago police fired as many as 96 bullets toward a man during a traffic stop, killing the 26-year-old and raising questions about whether officers use excessive force. Well, they enforce the law. That would be excessive force. While a preliminary investigation suggests the driver opened fire on officers, first, his family and attorneys question why plainclothes officers swarmed Dexter Reed's car with guns drawn and fired dozens of shots at him. Yeah, I have questions about that myself. The fatal encounter in the city's Garfield Park neighborhood on March 21st, several graphic body cam videos were released Tuesday by Chicago Civilian Office of Police Accountability. What the videos show: in one video, an officer wearing a hooded jacket and a tactical vest with a badge on it approached the driver of a white vehicle with dark tinted windows. Roll the window down, the officer tells the driver. The driver initially rolled his window down, but then kept rolling it back up. What are you doing? The officer asks. Don't roll the window up. Don't roll the window up. The officer pulls at the door handle, which appears to be locked, and then draws a gun. Unlock the doors now, unlock the doors now, the officer screams, as another officer shouts the same demands. Which does seem a little bit excessive for a traffic stop. The driver apparently says, "Okay, I'm trying to." Seconds later, as the officer retreats from the vehicle, gunfire breaks out. Dozens of gunshots were then heard in rapid succession. Other body cam videos show at least 2 other officers firing towards Reed from across the street in the residential neighborhood. Both of those officers pause to reload their guns. After the barrage of gunfire ends, Reed's body is found lying face down on the vehicle, or behind the vehicle rather. "He started shooting at us," an officer said in one of the videos. About a minute later, an officer examines Reed's bullet-ridden car. "The gun's right there," the officer says, shining a flashlight into the vehicle. One officer was shot in the wrist during the gunfire and was hospitalized in good condition, Chicago police said. Now, multiple agencies are investigating whether the officer's actions were justified. The traffic stop stemmed from a seatbelt violation, the agency says. So, a little bit at face value right now, on a couple different sides. I think police stops for seatbelt violations are bullshit, first and foremost. That is the immediate first thing that I have to say about this, is that is bullshit. To stop someone just for wearing a seatbelt, taking his life into his own hands. I understand it's a revenue generation situation for the officers. Now, with that being said, I need to know what bridges between the two. When it comes from, hey, I'm just going to give you I don't know what the penalty is in Illinois either. In Wisconsin, it's still $10. So I'm going to use $10 as my reference. I'm just going to give you a $10 ticket and be on your way. To, I have to come up to your vehicle with my gun drawn, literally. There's a step that we're missing here right now, and I need to see what it is. Now, with that being said, if you are going to raise an arm against the state, you need to be able to do so expecting the fact that they are going to raise their arms and come back at you full strength. I do think that we as civilians should be able to stand up to the state. But you have to accept the responsibility that if you do, they are going to shoot back. And they're trained in the position of mag dump, center mass. You're not just going to pull a gun at somebody and shoot it at somebody, especially if those 4 people are heavily armed, and expect to walk away. The second your finger squeezes on that trigger, you've given up your right to live. And I understand that fully, with a hope that I never have to stand up against the state, but knowing full well that if I ever do, I'm probably not going to walk away from it. And that is something that these civilian activists need to understand as well, when they're coming out here to do the investigation of the fact of, because he shot first, there is the expectation, whether spoken or unspoken, that the might of the state is going to come back down at you. Because it is what the might of the state does. That's why we have a Second Amendment to begin with. So that's where I stand with that. But I really need to know what happened between I'm going to give you a $10 ticket and now we're shooting at each other. What the step was between the two. And that's from both sides. I'd love to see what was going through Reed's head when he decided to take that action. Again, hopefully knowing full well, that it would come with basically the forfeit of his life if he did. From the BBC, we got to shift gears here a little bit. We've got a sticky inflation situation going on here, which is funny because, well, I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, well, it's just going to go away and it's all going to be good. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case by any stretch. From Natalie Sherman, U.S. inflation jumps as fuel and housing costs rise. Yes, we are back up to 3.5% year over year, but keeping in mind, of course, that at this time last year, inflation was just a little bit over 6, but it was also compounding over just a touch over 7. So to take 3.5 compounded again over 6.1, which was compounded over 7.2, when our target is 2 even, tells me that they don't have this thing under control. But also keep in mind, they don't want you to talk about the compounding factor. You're supposed to just see 3.5% and say, yay, it's falling. We would need, by the way, several years of negative inflation right now to undo the damage that this economy has done to our society and our country. Which I would be all for, by the way. Let's read from the BBC. Consumer prices in the U.S. rose faster than expected last month in a sign that the fight to low inflation has stalled. Prices rose 3.5% over 12 months to March, up from 3.2% in February, the U.S. Labor Department said. Higher costs for fuel, housing, dining out, and clothing drove the increase. Analysts warned that the lack of progress in curbing the prices will force the U.S. central bank to keep the interest rates higher for longer, which means that, yes, if you hope to go buy a house, you're fucked. Higher rates help stabilize prices by making it more expensive to borrow for business expansions and other spending. Again, like your primary residence if you don't happen to own it already. In theory, that in turn slows the economy and eases the pressures pushing up prices. The Federal Reserve's key interest rate is now at the highest level in more than 2 decades, in a range of 5.25% to 5.5%. Forecasters had expected the banks to start lowering borrowing costs this year, reflecting the fact that the inflation rate, which tracks the pace of price rises, has fallen significantly since hitting 9.1% in 2022. But recent economic data, including strong jobs creation figures last week, has raised doubts about how soon those cuts might come. Shares on Wall Street closed lower on Wednesday as investors have been betting the rates could be soon cut. Surprise! Analysts who once expected rate cuts as soon as March have been rapidly revising bets, with many now not expecting any until later this summer, and some predicting the bank could wait until next year, which would cripple, by the way, the Biden re-election campaign. What the Fed decides to do is likely to shape the decisions by central banks around the world, said Neil Birrell, Chief Investment Officer at Premier Miton Diversified Funds. The Fed has got some head-scratching to do, and if other central banks were waiting for the Fed to move, they have got a conundrum on their hands right now, he said. Inflation cooled rapidly over 2023 as pandemic-era supply issues healed, and the spike in food and energy prices sparked by the war in Ukraine faded, but still remains higher than the bank's 2% target. An uptick in oil prices in recent months has also pushed energy costs higher, while prices for services show little sign of stabilizing. The Labor Department said prices had jumped 0.4% from March to February the same as in February. Higher petrol and housing costs accounted for more than half the increase. Car insurance, medical care, and costs for internet also contributed. So-called core inflation, which is seen by economists as a better indicator of future trends because it does not include more volatile food and energy prices, stood at 3.8%, the same as in February. We shouldn't overreact to the jump in headline inflation, which was all about energy, said Brian Colton, chief economist at Fitch Ratings, but he added, the details are not all that reassuring for the Fed. So there are a few things to go on with this. Now, number one, where they keep saying the jobs boom, we are at a point right now where everybody who needs or can get or basically maintain a full-time job is employed. And part of that is out of necessity. And there is a bit of fear of going into something new. There are people who are doing it right now, but they are fewer and further between. In the auto industry, that's something I can tell you right off the bat because I've seen it up close and personal and I still live in it. There should be a lot more turnover than what I've seen over the last year. There should be a lot more people coming into a new job, leaving their job, and going over. Because that is a highly competitive field that almost never has enough people in it. Especially given the fact that a lot of the younger generations look at the idea of repairing a car and say, ew, my hands will get dirty. I want to be a TikTok star instead. I say that fully ironically, knowing that I'm transmitting on YouTube right now, hoping for clips and subs. But the prices keep going up and up and up, as there is more and more demand for the food. And the costs of labor keep going up because, well, we see in California the increase in minimum wage. We see a level of companies trying to compete for the workers to get them in. Because a lot of the places, in spite of the fact that we've got record job growth, are no way close to fully staffed. And they have to throw huge dollar amounts to try to pull some people in at this point. Dollar amounts that would have had you considered rich years ago. Not even that many years ago, honestly. Making 60 grand a year 3 years ago, I'd have been living high on the horse. Not only would I own my own house if I'd made last year, or if I made what I made last year back in, let's say, 2018, my house would probably be paid for, and so would probably my truck. And now it's like I'm barely making it. This is going to be the key election issue. As much as our friends on the left try to force abortion down our throat, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more, both in the mainline articles and things I like and things that I hate, this is going to be the key. Let's grab a quick run from CNBC. The supercore inflation measure shows the Fed may have a real problem on its hands. From Brian Evans. A hotter than expected consumer price index rattled Wall Street Wednesday, but markets are buzzing about an even more specific price gauge contained within the data, the so-called supercore inflation reading. Along with the overall inflation measure, the economists also look at the core CPI, which excludes food and energy. To find the true trend, the supercore gauge, which also excludes shelter and rent costs from its services, takes it a step further. Fed officials say it's useful in the current climate, as they see elevated housing inflation as a temporary problem and not a good measure of underlying prices, which is a load of crap, by the way. Because these prices are not going to come back down unless we come into a major situation that is going to force a lot of other people out of their wealth. When I talk about this and when I see what's happening in this, there are two things that I point out to people who say that we need to round up under Trump and deport every illegal alien at once, and also forcibly force China out of our housing market and our business market. Force them out of owning property in our country. And I always tell these people to be careful. Not that I want to see rampant illegal immigration, in China owning property driving prices up right now. But if you were to round up under Trump, because of the fact that these people have housing, use housing, and pay for housing both in rental and sales markets, which is part of what's driving the housing costs up right now. If you were to simultaneously expel all, let's say, 14 million illegal aliens in the country. I know that they keep trying to say it's 11 million. It's more than that after the last year. So if you were to take, let's say, all 14 million illegal aliens out of the country right now, at once, you get a major bust. Big Don comes out and has his deportation dream and funds infinity dollars to ICE, and they manage to go out and hire enough people, and they go all deportation order all at once. That's 14 million housing vacancies at once. With the banks that once held the notes for these homes scrambling to fill, offering as cut of rates as you possibly can get, and dropping prices trying to get people in, because if they're sitting vacant with no payments on them because their owners are no longer in the country, they're not making the banks any money. So you see the slash in interest rates, the slash in prices, which in turn brings the price of the houses that people currently own that are legally here down to go with them, where a lot of people, that's their only store of wealth, is their house. And if you, under the peak, bought your house for $450,000, and by the end of all that, it's now only worth $80,000, you're fucked. You're done. That's actually what drove us into the tank in the arm crisis in 2007, 2008, was so many people losing their houses and them going on the market to get sold at slash rate prices, driving the cost of the rest of the houses down. And it goes into a cycle. And then for all the property that is owned in this country by Chinese investors as rental properties or business property or just home ownership, to try to artificially inflate the market, if you do that at the same time, yeah, there's some of these houses that people bought for $500,000 that are only going to be worth $60,000 by the end of it. And that will shut our economy down. As much as I want to see both of those problems solved, it has to be done in a balancing act to make sure you can keep the value, maybe not up to the $500,000 mark, but into the $150,000 to $200,000 mark. If you get what I'm saying with that. Meanwhile, a lot of our prices would go up because, as the Mogwai pointed out, a lot of people would be needed to go back and fill the positions that they were filled in, and suddenly need to get minimum wage or more to do the job. Plus, all the farmers, the production workers, would be competing for all these same people who suddenly now want to get paid and want to get paid well. It's a precarious position that we're in right now. And Democrat or Republican, I do not envy the people who are up here trying to make the decisions to stave it off. But that was my housing rant for all this. ABC News, hot inflation, likely to delay interest rate cuts. Here's what to expect. 5.5% to 6.5% through the rest of this election cycle. I can sum that up without reading the article. And yes, there are people out there that need to take out these credit cards to buy groceries right now. A couple other things that I want to go with on this here before we head out of the topic. Goldman still expects U.S. inflation to fall significantly as markets alarmed by recent rise. From Sam Meredith. Goldman Sachs still expects stubbornly high U.S. inflation to ease over the coming months. Good luck. Despite investors slashing bets for Federal Reserve interest rate cuts, after yet another print showed consumer prices remain sticky. What is going to be a little bit funny about the interest rate cuts that they're hoping for is that's actually going to drive the inflation more because, I mean, there are people like me who are sitting in a closet right now, a literal closet, with the credit and the money and the income to go out and buy a house if the prices come down. But to a point where we could still do it at the current prices, just hoping the interest rates come down. And if the interest rates come down and they hit, let's say 3%, we won't take them down all the way to zero, but we'll take them down to 3%. A lot of us are going to jump to that and say, hey, it's time for us to go and buy that house that we have our eye on. And then as we all go compete for the same houses, plus we're all working against BlackRock as well, raising the prices over and over again, that price goes up and up and up as we're bidding against each other, possibly going well above asking for everybody. And then the inflation goes back up and the Fed has to raise the rates. You see where some of the issues coming in here? But I think possibly one of the funniest things to come out of this was that on MSNBC, at the time that the numbers dropped, apparently, and I haven't seen the clip yet, Democrat was trying to spin the bad inflation numbers. But MSNBC cuts away to more bad inflation numbers from Virginia Kruta. James Clyburn of South Carolina joined MSDNC on Wednesday to tout President Biden's record on the economy, specifically pointed to inflation, saying it was down, and claimed that disinformation was the reason so many Americans weren't seeing that progress. Clyburn was still at it when Mika Brzezinski, who agreed with Clyburn that disinformation was certainly a problem, broke in to point out the fact that inflation had risen more than expected in the last month. Let's watch.
And so the inflation rates are down and people's incomes are up. Unemployment is on the decrease. And although we see the prices at the stores costing more money, people are in fact earning greater incomes. So what we've got to do is make sure that people see the policies of the Biden administration, how they affect their everyday lives, and get them to see in his policies that which is real, not what they may hear on social media. One of the focus group people talked about social media and the misrepresentation, disinformation, all of those things are out there, and that's the battle that we have to fight, and we've got to do a better job of fighting it more effectively.
So I'll validate that. I think the disinformation out there is distorting the entire process. I think social media doesn't help. But there's also a lack of validation that these voters feel. And I'm going to bring in Andrew Ross Sorkin right now because we just got breaking news. The consumer price index increased at a faster than expected pace last month, a signal that inflation remains stubbornly high. Let's bring in Andrew, co-anchor of CNBC Squawk Box. What will this mean to people in their everyday lives?
Well, I think this was a big surprise. It is accelerating. And, you know, we've been on this broadcast for months now about how the trend line was in President Biden's favor. Today, I imagine they're throwing a party in Mar-a-Lago because the truth is that right now, inflation has now moved in the opposite direction. So it's going to be harder for the administration to make the argument around this inflation trend line. What it means, and you're seeing it in the markets just right now, is that frankly, mortgage rates are not going to be coming down. Credit card rates are not going to be coming down. There had been this view that the Federal Reserve might cut interest rates as early as June. There was an expectation of 3 interest rate cuts. Now that's getting pushed off again. You're seeing treasuries move up in price. The stock market has moved down on this news today. And as I said, it has been a shock and I think a surprise for many just how hot this number has turned out to be. And it surprised me, too.
So, Andrew, thank you for that. Thanks for jumping in with this new information.
What it comes down to, more than anything else, you can be the most blue Democrat in the world, but you have to come out and admit at some point that the Biden admin has no idea what they're doing. And all the policies of the Biden admin have exacerbated the inflation system. And again, it's not just the money printer go burr. I know a lot of people will come back and say, well, we have inflation right now because of the COVID aid packages that Donald Trump signed into law, and everything that we're seeing right now is Donald Trump's fault. And while I will admit to the fact that he probably had a hand in the initial inflation, especially with the COVID relief, that I urged him, and you can again go back into my channel and see, I urged him not to sign the PPP loan/grant program. I was against that in the beginning. I've never been for the PPP program. My first thought was open the business back up. And the people who have to shut them down, let them suffer. Or if they really want to shut down, let them suffer for what it is that they think that they're going to do to make a point. We don't need to come back and bail these people out. And yes, that even goes for me as far as to say, let New York City suffer. If they want to go and lay off all their employees at once, that's their problem. Let them take it up with Albany. California wants to lay off all its restaurant workers at once. That's between them and Sacramento, not them and the rest of the fucking country. I hate that argument, especially when it comes out to the student loan side of it. Oh, you're against student loans, but look at all these Republicans that got PPP loans forgiven. Yeah, those guys were fucking assholes too. The PPP program, while I understand its purpose, was one of the biggest mistakes of the GOP in 2020. But it goes further than the money printer go burr, just as I pointed out with housing, which is raising everything else right now. The price for rent is skyrocketing. The price for your primary residence, if you own, is skyrocketing. Vehicle prices are still way up. Even with the chip shortage down, because people, now that the vehicles are available, are trying to get that new vehicle to replace the one that broke down while the chip shortage was going on. It drives and drives and drives. And this is, at this point, the fault of the Biden admin entirely. The influence that the Trump admin had ended in late 2021. And after I've ranted against the Republican Party and the Democrat Party together, I do get to come back out and say that, holy shit, the GOP did something useful for once in their almost 200-year existence. From the Hill, group of Republican blocks the FISA bill with spy powers deadline looming. From Rebecca Beach and Michael Schnell. A group of House Republicans on Wednesday tanked a procedural vote to begin debate on a bill to reauthorize the nation's warrantless surveillance powers, leaving the chamber scrambling on how to address the important spy tool before it expires next week. "19 Republicans joined Democrats in voting against the rule for legislation to renew Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, blocking the measure from advancing 193 to 228. Good. And they are going for a Plan B right now. We'll probably talk about that on Tuesday. The move comes after former President Trump on Wednesday urged Republicans to kill FISA, throwing a wrench in an already contentious debate. The failed vote marks yet another instance of members of the GOP tanking what's typically a routine party line vote to protest legislation put forward by leadership. Led by Matt Gaetz and other MAGA-aligned conservatives, the group offered conflicting rationales for blocking the bill. They were upset with Speaker Johnson for backing the legislation without a warrant requirement, even though their upheaval means the warrant amendment they insisted has broad support will no longer get a vote. Yeah, but so the reauthorization doesn't get a vote either. I consider this a win. I'd consider it a bigger win if they actually shut the whole fucking thing down, but we don't have time for rational solutions. What we ended up with was a bill that didn't have the warrant protections in the bill, It was going to be forced to be added as an amendment, and then the Speaker of the House put his finger on the scale against the amendment, and that pretty much is the story, said Chip Roy, who voted against the rule, and he told reporters this after the vote. The move also shows the long-running feud between the House's intelligence and judiciary members over the matter is alive and well. The group of conservatives had also insisted a prior judiciary bill instead be brought to the floor. Legislation, they argue, places greater limitations on FISA, which again is good. That's a good thing. Leaving the vote Wednesday, Johnson said the House GOP conference would regroup and reformulate another plan to extend the country's spying powers. We cannot allow Section 702 of the FISA to expire. It's too important to national security. I think most of the members understand that, he added. House GOP conference is scheduled to huddle behind closed doors Wednesday afternoon. Now, is the government going to reauthorize FISA? Yes, it is going to happen. There are going to be some threats made and some backroom deals made, but yes, they are going to reauthorize warrantless spying against U.S. citizens, and it will come down to, they will find a way to do it, even if they have no contact with foreign people, which I think most of us do at this point. Yes, the government will find a way to keep spying on you without a warrant. But what we see here is an instance where we do see some people in Congress that are starting to work for the people who largely don't support the FISA system or the Patriot Act or a number of other things that our government uses to impede on our privacy without any sort of warrant, which we were supposed to have guarantees against at this point. The law is set to expire April 19th, a deadline that comes after the House was forced to pass a short-term extension in December as Republican lawmakers failed to reach an agreement on competing bills from the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. The failing of the rule vote is another major complication of legislation that's twice seen its path to the floor scuttled. In December and then again in February, over a fight about adding an unrelated bill barring the government from buying data from private brokers to the package. Now Republicans may have to work with Democrats to secure the 2/3 vote necessary to bring the bill to the floor under suspension, bypassing the rules process, and with it the vote on the amendment to add the warrant requirement. They don't understand governing, and they don't understand how to figure out decent compromises, said Jason Crow, House Intel member who supports the base bill. Which is kind of ironic that these folks who are pushing the warrant requirement have to put themselves in a position of not getting any of the reforms that they've needed. Well, again, that's because a lot of them want to see FISA end entirely. Blocking the potential for a vote on the warrant amendment makes this more complicated for other Republicans who back the effort to move forward on the bill. Well, shut it down. Of course, the only problem that I would have with shutting it down is suddenly we'll have a terrorist attack right after it's shut down saying, see, this is why we need this. And the people will beg, Daddy government, keep us safe. Axios, House GOP erupts over dysfunction after hardliners kill vote, from Andrew Solender. Republicans' internal tensions reignited Wednesday after a group of right-wing hardliners blocked a key federal surveillance bill from coming to a vote. It marks more than a half dozen times this Congress that Republicans' right flank ran the party's legislative agenda around by revolting on a standard party line procedural vote. GOP lawmakers plan to meet for a special conference meeting at 4 p.m., according to the House Republican, who predicted it will amount to an airing of grievances with some angry people. This is dysfunction. Nobody can leave this place. Look at it. What have we ever been able to really get accomplished? Said Troy Nehls of Texas, a Freedom Caucus member who voted for the rule, told Axios. Ryan Zinke of Montana called the tactic frustrating and moronic, telling Axios, when they complain that the train's not on time, well, you guys are the ones blowing the tracks. Michael McCall told Axios, "It's my 10th term. That's a part of the problem right there. And I've never seen that before. We have to govern. When I first came in, if you vote against the rule, there are consequences." Somebody primary that guy. Jesus, 10 terms. 20 years in government. "I don't appreciate it. Don't obviously think that this great tactic," said Mike Garcia, a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Just let the thing die. But, Mr. Johnson decided to weigh in on why he had a change of heart. Because when he was a rank-and-file member of the House, he was anti-FISA. And now, he's all for it. Hallie Talbot says Speaker Johnson elaborates his FISA flip-flop from when he was a rank-and-file member of the House, explaining that after receiving classified briefings, he has a different perspective.
When I was a member of the judiciary, I saw all the abuses of the FBI, the terrible abuses over and over and over, the hundreds of thousands of abuses. And then when I became Speaker, I went to the SCIF and got the confidential briefing from sort of the other perspective on that to understand the necessity of Section 702 of FISA and how important it is for national security. And it gave me a different perspective. So I encourage all the members to go to the classified briefing and hear all that and see it so they can evaluate the situation for themselves. And I think some opinions have changed both ways, but that's part of the process. You got to be fully informed.
Have you been
So here's my concern with that. And I can understand where a person would change his opinion now that he's getting classified briefings, but you're also, at this point, asking people to vote for or against a bill without being informed. And you say you changed your mind because you were informed. You saw the classified briefings, and now you're asking people who will never see these briefings to make a decision based on that information. No, you can fuck right off with that shit. All right, and before we get into the news from Tuesday, I do want to touch a bit on what happened in Arizona over the past couple days. So we're going to start with one here from CNN. Will Arizona enforce a Civil War-era law banning nearly all abortions in the state? Well, they did it in my state, as liberal and blue as we are. But part of that is because Protasewicz knows that if they keep that in limbo forever, that means that they can run on it forever. From Lauren Mascarenhas and Christina Zdanowicz. I think that's how you pronounce that. Arizona officials are scrambling to address a near-total abortion ban revived by the state's Supreme Court last week, before the Civil War-era law almost completely halts access to Arizona's already limited abortion services. I'm a little surprised they haven't tried to pump more abortions through and more places to get them through, given the fact that this is supposed to be such a blue state. The court ruled Tuesday the state must adhere to a law made before statehood, when Arizona was a territory, that bans all abortions except those necessary to save a pregnant person's life. The law, which is enforceable because Roe v. Wade was overturned, is broader than the state's 2022 ban on abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy and carries a prison sentence of 2 to 5 years for abortion providers. Arizona Republicans thwarted a vote to repeal the 1864 ban on Wednesday, as the scene on the state House floor erupted into chaos and Democrats chanted shame. The mounting political pressure in an election year has brought abortion to the forefront, and it's likely to be an issue on the ballot, analysts say. The state Supreme Court delayed enforcement of the law for 14 days to give the plaintiffs an opportunity to pursue other challenges in a lower court if they wish to, including challenges to the ban's constitutionality. It's unlikely there will be much movement on enforcing the law, as legal challenges are likely to get tied up in lower courts for some time, legal experts say. Well, Arizona AG Chris Mays and several county attorneys say that they will not prosecute abortion cases under the new ban. Analysts say it's unlikely providers will take on the liability of performing illegal medical services, leading to a possible chilling effect on abortions statewide. Based. In the meantime, abortion rights advocates are encouraging Arizona patients to seek services while they're still available. Yes, make your sacrifice to Moloch while you still can. And get to the polls in November when they will have the opportunity to vote on a ballot measure that will restore abortion access through the point of viability approximately 24 weeks into pregnancy. Will abortion cases be prosecuted? Probably not. Hobbs signed an EO in June granting the state attorney general authority over prosecuting abortion-related cases in the state, though that order has yet to be tested. It just prevents an extreme county attorney from using this ban to criminalize women and doctors for seeking the care or providing the care that their patients need, Hobbs told CNN on Tuesday. It hasn't been tested yet, and I'm hopeful it doesn't have to be. The AG's office has not prosecuted providers or patients under the existing 15-week ban and does not intend to prosecute any cases under the near total ban, Mays told CNN on Tuesday. We're looking at everything we possibly can do to make sure that this ban never actually goes into place in Arizona, Mays said. Nothing will be noting there will be opportunities in the next couple of weeks to fight the ban in court. Mays acknowledged it's possible for supporters of the abortion ban will try to take her to court over enforcement of the law. I'll see them in court, she said. So this is a bit interesting, and again, I see this in my state as well, where basically it became a trigger law, although this one was official in my state because it was made after Wisconsin was a state. But when I look at something like this, I question, of course, the timing of it. Whether or not there was a political advent to it, because we are in the middle of an election year right now. I am totally against abortion, although as far as the government involvement in the abortion goes, part of the problem that I have with that is that the people who would make the law would make sure that their donors, their friends, and themselves have a carve-out. Meaning that they can get away with it, but the little people can't. If they were to go back and put a ban in. And instead, I've always encouraged people, if you don't like abortion, make changes in your life to make sure that you and the people that you love never have to have one. Personal responsibility is greater than interference from the state. But the timing is interesting. Number one, and I know this was going through the courts beforehand, because in order for the Arizona State Supreme Court to rule on this, would first mean that they would have had to have a case come to them prior to this past Tuesday. This past Monday, I apologize. Because my first thought when this popped out was the fact that this is a direct response to the Donald coming out and saying, okay, this should all be a states' right thing. Nobody else should have a say. So then a state with a governmental blue bent comes back out and says, oh, hey, by the way, this law is here and we're going to enforce it now. You better come and vote against us, otherwise we're going to make sure that you have to be slaves to pregnancy or whatever the fuck else propaganda they use about the thing. And that does go, and that's the same thing in my state. The reason that the 1868 law in my state is still in effect is because Tony Evers and Wisconsin Democrats are going to run on this every single cycle. They're never going to change the law. They're never going to repeal the law. But they're going to run on it every single cycle. Oh, give us more of the legislature, and we'll overturn this. Oh, well, we don't have quite enough in the legislature. We can't overturn this yet. Oh, you better give us more of the legislature. Or we can otherwise we can't overturn it. The Mogwai says, is MTG ready to shit can that waste of space Johnson yet? Well, again, I don't think that's quite a good idea at this point. Is this the same state that allowed Sheriff Joe host unconvicted persons in a tent city too? It's not surprising. Yeah, Arizona is a bit of a mess right now, and a lot of it, I think, is showmanship. But where this goes, we're going to have to continue to watch and see. But I already know that your George Takei's and your Jersey My Wife's Son Reliance and JoJo from Joy's and people like that are already capitalizing on this for electoral issues. Kari Lake actually coming out against this whole thing. And I think part of that is to take this off the table for election, because Kari Lake knows, once again, if this sacred right is protected, then that's something that Democrats can't use in their campaign ads. Kari Lake lobbies Arizona lawmakers to overturn abortion ban she once supported. From Steve Contorno and Elena Treen. Arizona Republican Senate candidate Kari Lake is actively lobbying state lawmakers to overturn a 160-year-old law she once supported that bans abortion in almost all cases, a source with knowledge of her efforts told CNN. Lake is pushing for GOP lawmakers in her home state to repeal the law while leaving in place legislation signed in 2022 by Doug Ducey that would restrict it to the first 15 weeks. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that the state must adhere to the Civil War-era law, which bans all abortions except those necessary to save the woman's life. Lake has called state legislators and offered to help and support what they need to overturn the territorial law so it reverts back to the 15-week Ducey law, the source said. The move continues a remarkable 180-degree flip by Lake on the state abortion law and illustrates Republican concerns over how the issue is reverberating through the key battleground state. And once again, I point out the fact, it's my state. Should be the model for this. Protasewicz is a Supreme Court justice right now. Now, you can listen to people like Wiz Political all day, day and night, who has stepped away from X at this point, but you can listen to him all day and night say, the reason that seat flipped and the court flipped was because evil Dan Kelly was a Trump appointee. No. The reason it flipped was because right before the election, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and then Protasewicz ran on my barbaric 1800s law. I'll go in there and overturn that. You just have to come out in mass and vote for me. And meanwhile, here we are. 6 months later, no overturn. Democrats know what they're doing, and they know how to cheat the system. But that's part of the reason Kari Lake is trying to push back to the other part of it, because the actual consensus in this country, barbaric or not, and killing kids at 15 weeks is still barbaric, by the way. But the consensus among people is that 15 weeks is about the acceptable threshold. It's in line with what's in Europe. It means that people with rape, incest, etc. can go still get their help, even though every state that has these laws has a carve-out for rape or incest, except for Arizona, ironically enough. I think that's part of the reason she's also lobbying for this, is because it doesn't have the carve-out for rape or incest, which means that she is going to get hammered on that as she goes into the election cycle. And the biggest reminder I have to remind all Republicans, especially the DeSantis bros right now, is if you are not in office, you don't make laws. I'm going to repeat that one more time. If you are not in office, you don't make laws. All right, let's catch up with what we left behind on Tuesday. Hey, look, that's me. Alright, we're going to do some based Fetterman. Even though I still don't trust the guy as far as I can throw him. From Newsweek, John Fetterman says squatters should have no rights. Which is fine, I agree with you, John Fetterman, but I'm still not going to trust you because you're a rabid redistributionist socialist and you're a fucking gun grabber. But I will give credit when credit is due, of course. From Gabe Wisnat. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman said squatters should have no rights in an interview published Saturday by the New York Post. Squatters have no rights. How can you even pretend this is anything other than you're just breaking the law, Fetterman said. Squatters are people who inhabit a piece of land or a building they do not have a legal right to occupy. They live in the building or property without paying rent and without lawful documentation stating they own the property, are a law-abiding tenant, or that they have permission to use the access to the area. There's little research about the scale of the issue in the U.S., but areas in Georgia, Florida, and Texas had more squatters than other metro areas, according to a survey by the National Rental Home Council. The issue of squatters' rights has generated debate across the country after incidents where property owners found themselves embroiled in legal disputes over individuals residing in their properties without their permission. 6 of 8 migrant squatters arrested last week in New York City on drug and gun charges were released by 2 judges without posting bail against the discretion of local AGs. The New York legislators are pushing for new laws cracking down on squatting, following several recent clashes between squatters and homeowners. Fetterman told the New York Post he also faced the issue when he was mayor of Braddock. It's wild that if you go away on a long trip for 30 days and someone breaks into your home and suddenly they have rights. The Democratic senator continued. This is crazy. Like if someone stole your car and they held it for 30 days, and then somehow you have some rights. Newsweek reached out to Fetterman's office via email Saturday night. The article will be updated with any statements available. It is wild that they do this, and Fetterman is right. Again, I'm not going to be a person that says all Democrats are wrong all the time. When they say something that's right, even if it's the stupidity of AOC, if she gets some wood on the ball at some point, I'll say, yeah, you were right. Did I not? When she got heckled by her own constituents at the movie theater, come to her defense and say, yes, this is your just desserts because you want other people to do so, but really people, again, these are people who are not currently at work trying to go out and live their lives. You have no right to do this. No matter what stupid thing the person said about protesting against political enemies before. When Fetterman says something right, he gets the credit. Let's grab one from Fox News. Shilu on Fetterman squatters takes. He's been talking some sense lately. From Alba Cuevas Fantauzi. Fox News contributor Guy Benson and panelists analyzed Fetterman's comments on wokeness and squatters on the big weekend show. And we read all this one here from the New York or Newsweek earlier. I'm not woke, Fetterman said also. I love that Fetterman, he's been talking some sense lately, which is surprising to me, but yeah, of course it's a no-brainer. Fox News contributor Tom Shilu said. The idea you can occupy someone's home and then all of a sudden it's yours. Why wouldn't I just buy a house and after my first month stop paying my mortgage? Shilu said. It doesn't make any sense at all. I think that their argument, it's a right-wing talking point, he continued. When anybody has a life-threatening experience, an existential experience, as he did with the stroke, things can begin to change when you realize, oh, wait a minute, tomorrow might be the last day. I think it affected him. Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce said. Well, there are more people who come out and say that he's a body double and he actually died from the stroke. But I feel like if Democrats needed to fill in that badly, they'd have picked somebody who would have played ball with them at least. I think that a lot of this puts the body double thing to bed. Because if they wanted an actor, they would have hired an actor who actually acts like a progressive. When you're getting outside points of view about the nature of how you view the world and the nature of envy and anger and rage, which is what fueled and perpetuated on the left, if you can move away from that personally, it's amazing how you can view the world differently. I think that's part of his experience, she continued. It's a nightmare for people who are victimized by this, Benson said. Well, again, if Fetterman comes out publicly and stops talking about tax the rich and redistribution and social programs and this and that and the next thing, I might get behind him. And if he comes out and says everybody should have a gun all the times, on them at all times, I might get behind him. But right now, again, I understand what he's saying is right here. But it doesn't overshadow the fact that he has been a gun grabber for his whole career. Vong says Dems can indeed be right, but to do so they would have to agree with me, which makes them very unlikely to be right on any given topic. Mogwai says Fetterman says smart items so rarely. Fetterman makes Rosen Island and 90% of St. Olaf, Minnesota look like geniuses. That I think is a movie reference that I don't get, by the way. If you just said St. Olaf, Minnesota, I probably would have dismissed it as you know somebody from St. Olaf and you just think lowly of that person. But with the name on it, first and last, I do think that there is probably a reference that I don't get. Alright, what else do we have here? From 6 News, WOWT out of Omaha. Nebraska State Senator Mike McDonald changes his party affiliation. From Gina Dvorak, and the wailing and gnashing of teeth continues. A Nebraska State Senator censured last month by the state Democratic Party said Wednesday he's formally joining the GOP. Mike McDonald made the announcement at noon in the Nebraska Capitol Rotunda. He represents District 5 in South Omaha between 72nd Street and Interstate 480. The Nebraska Democrat censured McDonald in March after he voted alongside Republicans, particularly on matters regarding reproductive rights and the rights of transgender Nebraskans. There had been a lot of talk of a formal censure last summer over the same issues, but no such vote was taken. In a statement Wednesday, NDP chairwoman Jane Klebe reinforced the party's decision to censure him, denying the action had anything to do with McDonald's religious beliefs or affiliation. So, TLDR on this, and I am a little bit, especially as a representative, he's a state rep, not state senator, right? No, he is a state senator, so at that point I would have to learn a little bit more about how the state senate works as far as representation of the people. Assembly members, representatives are easy because they're directly elected by the people in order to represent the will of the particular district that they are in. And in Wisconsin, both the assembly and the state senate serve the same role, just in a different capacity, in the bicameral legislature. In Nebraska, it might be a little bit different, but I'm going to go on the assumption for the example that I'm going to give here, that it does work the same as it does in Wisconsin. So, while I appreciate and understand that by his religious convictions, he is having a change of heart in how he views the world and what he wants to do representatively going forward. Part of the issue I have, and it's the same problem that I had with Amash. Back when Amash was in the news, it's not that particularly I don't want to see a change of the party, because if they're not doing the things that you should do, you should change your party. If you are a representative of a district directly elected by the people, though, you are elected to bring the opinions of your district to the state capital, to Omaha, which in his case is where he lives in the beginning. So this especially goes with the censure vote, too. It should have been on the people of his district to decide whether or not the Democratic Party should censure him or not. Because essentially, when he goes and votes one way or the other, he's supposed to be saying, okay, the people of this district, this is what they want out of our government. I am but a tool for what they want. And I always use the example of Amash as a representative who voted to impeach Trump against the wishes of his district directly, and they said so. They said it was directly against their wishes. And he went in and did it anyway. And they rebuked him and made recall threats against him. And he just said, fuck you, I'm changing parties then. I'm going to be independent. And then wondered why he didn't get reelected the next time through. I appreciate the reasoning that he brought forward to impeach Trump. I think he was wrong, but I appreciate the reasoning that he brought forward for it. But that doesn't supersede the fact that you were voted to be a representative of a certain district of people in Michigan to the United States government. That is your first duty as a representative. And I mean, if the people in his district, if he keeps voting the way that they want, I see no issue with him changing party. I guess I would have to see a poll about his district to see where they stand on this. But of course, the Democrat Party is going to be all pissy at him. California, in a story of how to tank your own economy. And part of that comes by not archiving articles before you get started. Come on. From the New York Post. California's $20 fast food minimum wage balloons menu prices, with some chains increasing costs by nearly $2. I knew I should have known that name. As soon as you said Golden Girls, it clicked for me, which I haven't seen a lot of that series since I was very, very young. Without having an antenna or regular cable, I don't see the syndication. I've looked to see where it's been syndicated, by the way, or where you can stream it. I've not found any place where you can stream it. But I have been interested in seeing the Golden Girls as an adult, because I was like 5 or 6 when it went off the air. Now I get it. Long says, don't do St. Olaf so dirty. There are people there with enough of a functioning brainstem that you can distinguish them from corpses. Not many, but they do exist. Does it? I have Hulu now. I got a free month of it for ordering Chinese food for the entire office, and then I kept it. Is it on their live version though? Because that'll be the kicker. I'll look into that after the stream. I have Hulu, so. Nebraska, where overalls and flannel are unisex. All right, back to California. From Genevieve Wong, who is probably not Wong in this article, Andy Tillett and Stephen Helling. You'll be dropping a lot of dollar on that Whopper. Menu prices at fast food chains across California have increased, as a new law went into effect requiring them to pay $20 an hour minimum wage to workers on Monday. The Post checked menus at several restaurants in the LA area to see if the costs are already being passed to consumers, with mixed results. The biggest leap was at Burger King, where a Texas Double Whopper meal cost $15.09 on March 29th, but surged to $16.89 on April 1st. A whopping increase of $1.80, or nearly 12%, for the same meal. Okay, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that even a flagship menu sandwich with a meal costs $15 to begin with. And I don't know what it costs over here because I haven't set foot in a Burger King since they did the Chick Fries commercial in 2015. Which is a shame, again, because that was actually one of my favorite fast foods. I don't eat fast food very often, but like especially when I was in my early 30s, if I did, it was Burger King. Partially because where I moved after I got out of Kenosha, there really wasn't a Burger King around anywhere. But then when I moved out of Dane County, it was readily available to me, but they'd already started being ultra cringe, and I didn't want to give them my money anymore. Now, they haven't done anything really cringy in a long time, and I haven't had a Whopper in almost 10 years. I might consider it again, but not if the price is that. Holy fuck. The Big Fish meal also jumped from $7.49 on the menu before April 1st to $11.49, an increase of $4, 53% increase for the Big Fish meal. Most of the other items increased anywhere from 25 cents to $1. Burger King did not respond to a request for comment. Burger King was not alone. At Hart House, the fast food chain founded by Kevin Hart, prices increased up to 25%. At a nearby In-N-Out, the price hikes were the most modest. Burgers were up about 25 cents, while sodas increased by a nickel. But In-N-Out, by the way, also already paid people pretty well from what I understand. So they weren't absorbing as big of a hit. To be honest, I don't like it because then everything else goes up. Ivan Moreno, who's buying a meal at Burger King, told the Post, these people will have to make a living one way or another, but then the restaurants have to up their prices. Hey, we've upped our prices. Up yours. That joke started out as we've upped our standards. Please don't say back to California. No one wants to go back there. Burger King did not respond to a comment claiming their speaker was broken. Nice. But it's not just the prices, by the way. From the Daily Wire. Finish this up, we'll do some foreign news, and we'll head out of here for the day. California triggers bloodbath by raising minimum wage to $20 an hour. From Matt Walsh. This is an op-ed. And we're only going to read briefly out of it because they paywall the fucking thing. Bastards. For several years now, Democrats in the state of California have enjoyed all the perks of a one-party rule. With supermajorities in the state assembly, they don't have to deal with opposition party. They certainly don't need to provide any kind of transparency to the public. They're completely free to enact the Democrats' grand vision. Just like the leaders of notorious utopias like Baltimore, Selma, Detroit, or Oakland. If states are the laboratories of democracy, then California is the laboratory of a Democratic Party. Whatever Democrats want, they get. That's why hundreds of thousands of people flee California every year, and that's why a lot more are about to leave the state. California, without much discussion or debate, raised the minimum wage for certain fast food workers to $20 an hour. That's a 25% wage hike, up from 16. The law applies to chains with 60 or more locations in California, including franchises, many of which are family-owned. Now, and I already know where he's going with this when he says bloodbath, and that's the fact that layoffs and hiring freezes ensue when you see a massive hike like this. Damn you and your paywall, by the way. And that's going to leave a lot of people with an inability to either get a side hustle or in some cases their primary job. And it's got the usual level of Matt Walsh snark in the beginning of this because it is an op-ed. But yeah, I mean, you have menu price raises, you have hiring freezes, you have cost cuts, shrinkflation, and yes, you have layoffs. So, how to destroy your economy in one easy step. Let's do some foreign stuff. Netanyahu on the hot seat. Inside Biden's pointed phone call with Netanyahu. And when they say Biden's pointed phone call, they mean Biden's handler. This is an op-ed, or as CNN calls it, news. MJ Lee reporting. You've reached your article limit. Continue reading with a free CNN access and come back tomorrow. You can go and fuck yourself out loud. Hey look, somebody archived that already. Pay for CNN. Fuck you. I'll tell you that right off the bat. Biden ticked through several things that he needed to see Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu do immediately. Open up the Erez crossing into northern Gaza and the port of Ashdod in southern Israel for humanitarian aid, significantly ramp up the supplies, getting in through Kerem Shalom. A person familiar with the Thursday call paraphrased Netanyahu as responding, "Joe, we're going to do it." Somehow I doubt that. It's an anonymous source. Mogwai, it's your cat. But Biden wasn't finished. The Prime Minister must announce the moves that evening, the President insisted. By Thursday, the Israeli Security Cabinet had approved those three measures to increase humanitarian aid entering the besieged enclave. The relatively brief phone call between the two leaders this week marked the first time since Hamas's attack on Israel in October that Biden threatened Netanyahu with serious consequences if Israel in October, wow, I'm starting to talk like Joe Biden here. Let's try that again for the audio platform. The relatively brief phone call between the two leaders this week marked the first time since Hamas's attack on Israel in October that Biden threatened Netanyahu with serious consequences if Israel did not change the way it was waging war in Gaza. Biden, who's remained steadfast in his support of Israel's right to defend itself, even amid growing political backlash at home, warned the Prime Minister if conditions did not rapidly improve for civilians in the Strip, he would reconsider how the U.S. was backing Israel in the conflict, which would end his presidency, by the way. This is how I think the phone call actually went, and that's, again, assuming that Biden was actually on it, which I question. Hey, man, I need you to open up the thing, man, for humanitarian and the port. We need to get aid in there, man, or you're not going to get the $10 million, man. Come on. And Netanyahu said, "Oh yeah, Joe. Oh, we'll totally do it. Yup. We sign another check now. We know where the bodies are hidden." From Axios, we won't support you inside Biden's ultimatum to Bibi. Again, that has absolutely no teeth. And Netanyahu knows it. Biden laid out an ultimatum to Netanyahu in their call on Thursday. If Israel doesn't change course in Gaza, we won't be able to support you, man. He said, according to three sources of knowledge of the call. Unnamed sources, of course. Biden didn't specify what a loss of U.S. support would entail, and he didn't mention the possibility of stopping weapons shipments to Israel. the sources said, but it was the president's toughest call with Netanyahu since the October 7th attacks, both in tone and substance. It resulted in Netanyahu beginning to take steps he had opposed before. Fact check, Biden was not on this call. Many of the most senior members of the admin were on the 30-minute call Thursday, including Vice President Harris and Anthony Blinken, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Sullivan was probably the person who was making the demands, most likely. Biden told Netanyahu there's a need for a pause in the fighting in Gaza due to the incident in order to allow humanitarian aid efforts to resume, the sources said. When asked on Friday by a reporter if he threatened Netanyahu with conditioning military aid, which, by the way, would be an impeachable offense, we learned that with the Ukraine, Biden replied, the Israelis are doing now what we asked them to do. Because it's two-tiered. Another one from CNN here, which is probably going to get blocked in just a second. The risk of wider war in the Middle East looms over Biden's re-election effort. From Stephen Collinson. Yeah, told you. Hey, look, that one's already archived too. Thank you, internet sleuths. CNN, you will get not one penny from me. 6 months into Israel's war with Hamas, Biden is becoming ever more entangled in a foreign crisis he cannot control, which is about 3/4 of his problem, but which is having deep consequences for U.S. domestic allies and is weighing heavily on his re-election bid. The omnipresent geopolitical risks of the war were thrown into high relief over the weekend, with U.S. officials warning of a potential retaliatory attack in the region by Iran after an Israeli strike on Iran's embassy complex in Damascus, alongside pledges from Israel to escalate into the northern border with Lebanon, even as it continues its operation in Gaza to rout Hamas. Yes, we are potentially at the precipice of a regional war in the Middle East. The kind we haven't seen since there was a fucking W in office. The Tehran-backed group that killed more than 1,200 Israelis and took out more than 200 hostages in its October attacks. Talks are set to begin in Cairo this week in the shadow of a growing international upset over human consequences of the war, in which more than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed. U.S. forces in the region and Israel were on high alert. Why we have U.S. forces in the region, I don't know. We're not at war in the region right now. For possible attacks by Iran in reprisal for the killing of 2 senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officers in Damascus last week, in a strike the U.S. attributes to Israel. Any action by the Islamic Republic against Israel or U.S. interests could spark a full-scale Middle East war, the White House dreads. Even if Iran doesn't hit back, lower-grade clashes are already simmering across the region. The U.S. has struck Iranian clients in Yemen, the Red Sea, Syria, and Iraq, while Israel's northern border, where it regularly trades missile fire with Hezbollah forces in Lebanon, is becoming increasingly dangerous. Israel is facing what its former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett told CNN on Sunday is Iranian octopus of terror. Now, typically, in a wartime situation, the incumbent gets an electoral advantage, which I do believe is what drove Biden to push as hard as he did into the Ukraine #1. And then to start to push into this conflict in Israel. Typically noting that backing Israel in any situation is a winning strategy electorally. But I don't think this is going to be the case this time through. problem with it being is, with Biden, if he sides with Israel, he shores up some of the uniparty neoconservative faction of things. The people who are anti-Trump and wouldn't support it anyway. Along with his major corporate Democratic coalition. But he loses his left flank, who will probably not come out to vote for Trump, but will likely stay home if he pisses them off enough. It is an interesting situation to find oneself in. This is one of the big situations where I don't think going into a regional Middle East war helps Biden, in spite of the fact that it was a godsend to W. So, we do have, of course, Ukraine doing a major drone strike. But I think I'm going to call it here. I don't do as much foreign policy, and I admit to the fact that I don't. But I think we're going to wrap it up for the night. And we do so in the same fashion we do every night. And that is with things that I like and things that I hate. But first, the rules of acquisition. As we say every week on the show, the rules of acquisition are a series of rules for the Ferengi religion of hypercapitalism. Keeping these rules throughout your entire life, to the degree that you can keep them, allows you enough social credit at the end of your life to bid for your new life in the divine treasury. Every week, we go over one of these rules. We talk about how it was used in the series and how it could potentially be used in real life. Some of them cannot be, of course, and I have brought that up when there are rules that cannot be used in real life, like the boomer mentality of he who dies with the most toys wins. Or, in Ferengi terms, the man is only worth the sum of his possessions. But we move on to Antimatter, which was a DS9 novel, giving us the 290th rule of acquisition. An angry man is an enemy, and a satisfied man is an ally. I feel like we did this one already. I don't know why, but that rule just seems completely familiar to me. We're going to go over it again because I don't think I did. But let's look at the 290th rule of acquisition. An angry man is an enemy and a satisfied man is an ally. Let's think about that for a second. Yahoo reviews, Google reviews, etc. are probably the biggest indicator of this, because even in business settings, you'll get called into the office. You'll have 55 5-star reviews, but the first time you get that 1-star review, there's a panic attack. All departments are shut down as we sit back and discuss what went wrong with this. And again, even if you have 55 5-star reviews and only that one 1-star review, first off, that 1-star review seems to be the one that everyone focuses on. But, I mean, if you have 55 5-star reviews, you're doing something really well, because, as has been pointed out on numerous occasions in business, the satisfied customer doesn't feel the need to go back out and sing your praises. They just come back and keep giving your business. But an angry customer will be the first one to try to shut down your business, to try to stop you, and try to tell everyone else to avoid your business. Which is where enemy and ally can come into two different things. Like, again, you can get profit, can continue to get profit out of the satisfied man, and he may or may not go out and tell a dozen people about your business or to go back and frequent your business. But when somebody's mad, he'll come out here and he'll tank your reviews, he'll tell everybody the worst things, even whether or not they're true, to try to get people to not go and give their money to you. So, and we should be telling more people about the positive experiences that we have out there. Part of the reason I always say, hey, go tell your friends about the fact that we're here for Contemporary, because that's the way that we grow, is by word of mouth. So, Yes, absolutely. The 290th holds true. An angry man is an enemy, and a satisfied man is an ally. I'm going to check that novel out here once I'm done with the Darth Bane trilogy. I want to see some more Trek novels. I've only ever read one Trek novel trilogy, but I really enjoyed it. It was really good. And I haven't gone back to them since, and I don't know why, because I liked the one so much. It seems to be true, but only because it doesn't say whose enemy or ally said angry or satisfied man is. Well, they're supposed to be your enemies and allies, if you're following the rule, but I do see the philosophical point of what it is you're saying with that. I get where you're coming from on that one. Alright, let's do a couple things I like and a few things that I hate. The thing that I like, we're going to go back to the abortion argument for just a moment here. I know we talked it to death earlier on in here, but friend of the show, Sam Janney, or the Foo, who is Politabunny over on X, gave probably one of the better explanations about what actually happened with Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Services. And this is kind of a TLDR. This was from a thread that involved first Stephen King, who's again trying to say, and this, right now, the entire political establishment, especially with a hotter than expected inflation report, is trying to make the entire election about only one thing, abortion. Because they have won in states like Ohio and Kansas by trying to run entirely on that. And yes, even our Supreme Court Justice Protasiewicz, even though she is not doing anything to overturn the 1800s law in my state, she and Wisconsin Democrats will continue to run on it until the end of time. Because it's all that they have. They can't run the economy or any accomplishments, no matter how much the paid shills tell you everything is fine. It's not fine. But the Foo points out, actually, Jody, what happened was a women's clinic in Mississippi got stingy over the 15-week ban and tried to overturn that in their state. And it went to the Supreme Court, and as a result, Roe was overturned. So really, Democrats killed Roe. And that's an interesting point to point out when we look at this here, is the people who sued in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health was the abortion clinic, who was suing over the fact that they couldn't obtain an abortion after 15 weeks. And they were the one that brought it up to the first the regional court, the district court, and then up to the state court before it got to the Supreme Court. They were the ones who triggered this. Now, do I believe that there was already things going in motion for when Roe got overturned? Yes, and I believe Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health was one of them. But never forget, it was Jackson Women's Health that sued first. And the rest is history at this point. A little bit of clarity coming from the Biden admin, actually. And wokeness with the video, a minute long, out of Fox News. Breaking, Sage Steele admits that her entire interview of Biden was carefully scripted by network executives. Which is, I think, something that we've known for a very long time already. Every single question was scripted and gone over dozens of times by multiple editors and executives. And of course, Biden probably had extensive notes to go with it as well, because he can't really be trusted to go off script off of this. But let's listen to what it is they have to say in a rare moment of clarity.
Here as we get set for a wonderful day in sports. Opening day for America's national pastime.
This was about 2 months after he took office. That was an interesting experience in its own right, because it was so structured, and I was told, you will say every word that we write out. You will not deviate from the script, and go. To the word, like every single question was scripted, gone over dozens of times by many executives, editors and executives. Absolutely. I was on script and was told not to deviate. It was very much, this is what you will ask, this is how you will say it. No follow-ups. No follow-ups. Next. I knew that this was a lot bigger than just the wonderful editors that I worked with. This went up to the fourth floor, as we said, that were all the the bosses, the top executives, the decision makers are the president of our company, the CEO, where they all work.
Here as we get set for a wonderful day in sports.
Yeah, and it's Biden is not well. I don't understand where people come back out and continue to try to say that he's doing well, his mind is great, he's sharp as a tack and everything. You hear it every time he goes off script. And there's especially when he went and tried to tell the world that he was mentally competent and forgot about the prayer beads within 2 sentences of him saying he's perfectly mentally sharp, and all the people out there yelling, "No!" when he turned around and went back to go take more questions after he assured the media he was mentally sharp and was walking away. But at least they'll come back out and say the quiet part out loud. You know, that's why this is on Things That I Like. For so long, this has been tried to be held as a major secret. All right, we've got one from The Blaze. Mayo Clinic study sounds the alarm that puberty blockers may inflict irreversible harm on boys. Possible cancer link. Again, something that I typically hate, but the fact that people are being willing to say something about it for one of the first times since this became a major cultural issue. Paul Saka reporting. And by the way, the Mayo Clinic is in no way a right-wing institution. I know a lot of people that work there. Dual Helix says, I can't believe Dems can't find a better man. They lied and said they're the president we want. Can't find a better man. I apologize for nothing. A groundbreaking study from the renowned Mayo Clinic has revealed that puberty blockers may have irreversible harm on boys. The exact opposite message that transgender activists perpetuate. The study casts doubt on the safety of so-called gender-affirming care and presents a possible link to cancer with puberty blockers. The preprint study found that the use of puberty blockers in male children can result in mild to severe testicular atrophy, cancer. The study, which has yet to be peer-reviewed, utilized samples from the Mayo Clinic's Pediatric Testicular Biobank for fertility preservation. The scientific study examined testicular specimens from 87 biological males under the age of 18 who were undergoing fertility preservation surgery of the group. There were 16 who were gender dysphoric, ranging in age from 10 to 16. Of those 16 patients, 9 took puberty blockers between 3 and 52 months. 2 of the 9 were taking puberty blockers exhibited unusual testicular features upon examination. Well, you're doing something that affects your hormones. Of course there are going to be unusual features. One exhibited abnormalities in both nuts, including incomplete development of the tunica albuginea that protects the testes. A 12-year-old boy who was on puberty blockers for 14 months showed 59% testicular atrophy, along with microlithiasis, a small cluster of calcium linked to testicular cancer. A 14-year-old boy who took puberty blockers for more than 4 years had over 90% of the cells responsible for sperm production stunted at an early age, according to researchers. Now, one of the things I do have a problem with this, the reason this is on Things That I Like, though, is this is showing all the things that we've been saying for years, that this causes major problems. But this is going to be very easily dismissed because if we've got 2 and 4, like the trans activists are already writing the script for this one. Well, that's just 2 and 4, maybe 1 and 3 cases. This is just statistical noise, which technically it is. For studies for something like this, I would like to see a much, much broader sample of something like this. I believe the numbers would stay consistent among, like if you went into a 1,000-person double-blind study. And I don't even know that there are 1,000 people who would participate in the age range. Because transgenderism is a very small part of the population. It's less than 1%. But, I mean, to see something like this, I would almost have to see a broader spectrum just based on the fact that, oh, that's just 2 cases. That's statistical noise. Oh, did I not say formerly known as... Oh, it's the Blaze, though, too. I don't know if they say a lot of that. I'd love to see if this stretches out and goes beyond just the couple people who were in this study. I've got this feeling it will. Because when you come out to try to play God, God pushes back. Ask the Pharaoh how that works. A couple more things before we move on to some things that I hate. We push another one off into a happy retirement. From the Daily Wire, Wheel of Fortune host Pat Sajak's last show will be June 7th. It's already taped, in fact. From Hank Berrien, an institution of many of our childhoods, by the way. The Wheel was huge, especially in the early 90s, but even up into the 2000s and later. People still recognize the big wheel, they still watch the clips, and it still gets massive viewership. I don't know how, but it still does. The iconic host of Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak, who became the longest-running host of a game show in television history in 2018, will appear as the host for the last time on June 7th. Sajak started hosting the show in '81 when he took over from Chuck Woolery. Didn't Woolery go on to, NBC after that, too, as a newscaster? He's received 19 nominations for the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Game Show Host and won 3 times. Yeah, he's a charismatic one. He announced the impending retirement last June, tweeting, "Well, the time has come. I've decided that our 41st season, which begins in September, will be my last. It's been a wonderful ride, and I'll have more to say in the coming months. Many thanks to you all. If nothing else, it'll keep the clickbait sites busy." Which is an awesome response, by the way. Merv Griffin fought for Sajak to become the host to succeed Woolery. He took over as host in '81. In the 2018 to 2019 season, he became the longest-running host of any game show, passing Bob Barker, who hosted The Price is Right. Sajak's rapier wit on Twitter has endeared him to conservatives for years, targeting the non-stop coverage of Britain's Prince Harry and wife Meghan Markle amid ferociously incessant coverage of the woke couple because of Harry's new memoir, Spare. Sajak tweeted, "Having trouble finding information about Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, I think. Any sources you might suggest?" Yeah, he is kind of a savage. This is not a liberal individual. I wouldn't necessarily say he's full-out conservative. I think he's probably more libertarian than anything, but I have seen some of his... I don't follow him on X, but I've seen some of what he has posted, and he has been savage. It's been fun to watch. And I do wish him well into his retirement. At the very least, it'll give him more chance to be more savage on X. And finally, Florida's off the board. DeSantis highlights the state's transition from swing state to GOP stronghold. Florida man Ron DeSantis said during an interview over the weekend that due to the work he's done as governor, the state has transitioned from being a one-time swing state to a GOP stronghold heading into the 2024 election. "When I became governor of Florida, had never been more registered Republicans than Democrats in state history," DeSantis told Maria Bartiromo. "And we're close to 300,000 fewer Republicans than Democrats. This is 2018. Today we have close to 900,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. So you're talking about a 1 million plus voter registration shift. And yes, part of that I think is a response locally, where people are more likely to switch from Democrat to Republican in Florida." That's not it either. "Non-party to Republican, then vice versa. And that's been an important component of it," he continued. "I have addressed this numerous times. in various analyses around DeSantis, because that was probably one of my more fascinating subjects to talk about for me. I don't know if it was fascinating for other people, but it was fascinating for me to see where somebody who, especially among conservatives, had such a vast track record on Florida fared so poorly in national polling. And a lot of the things that I pointed out. First off, you can freely move from state to state in this country. And DeSantis brought a lot of people in from around the country. Gavin Newsom tried to disparage that and point out that a lot of people left. Well, a lot of Democrats left Florida, saying, well, we can't be a part of this. And DeSantis's broad powers that would not stretch to him in D.C., in the White House. His ability to do executive order and not get pushback from it, to reach out and supersede the will of the voters and fire a prosecutor who's not doing his job, to take on Disney and things that he could do with the laws and bylaws that were written into the Florida Constitution that are not necessarily reflected in the U.S. Constitution, did push a lot of that. And yes, there was a lot of Democrat migration away from Florida and a lot of Republican migration in New York, California, Illinois. I know a lot of people in Illinois that went to Florida. It's become a political haven for Republicans and a place that Democrats seek to run from after they realize that the bylaws make it very hard for DeSantis to be impeached or recalled. Meanwhile, he keeps making decisions that I don't agree with, such as SB 269, and things that would not translate to a national stage. He's a good governor, and he can use the laws that are given to him in his state's constitution. I will never begrudge DeSantis of that, my disagreements with him aside. He took the best of the situation and ran with it. And that's good. And it gives people a place to, because you should be able to migrate and find policies that you like. It gives people a beautiful place that they can go to with a year-round temperate climate where they don't have to be subject to the whims of the state of California. I like this. Again, my differences with DeSantis aside, this is a good thing. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. We've got a prosecutor putting his finger on the scales, as they always do. From NBC News, Special Counsel Jack Smith urges Supreme Court to reject Trump's presidential immunity claim. Where the fuck do you have standing to do this? By the way. And the thing that I hate about this is that our friends on the left will be screaming foul. If Trump or Trump's lawyers were pushing the same urging. Jack Smith is a piece of shit. He's a partisan hack and he only has the job because he said that he could go after the Orange Man and get the Orange Man. The justice system should be blind. They should have the ability to go back in and say, hey, here's the reason why this is immunity, here's the reason why it's not. And honestly, to have broad, full-out immunity for a presidential candidate, I disagree with. Although in a couple situations with this one, number one, we're in a situation where he's already been tried for this by impeachment through the levers and mechanisms that were put in place by the Constitution, because they had to go back and do it while he was in office, because they had to go back and impeach him twice. For show, of course. So he's already been tried and acquitted for this once. Double jeopardy should kick in, if nothing else. And there really isn't a mechanism to try a president for crimes that he committed while in office in a civilian court. Unless, of course, it's brought forward, and then it's basically a sentencing situation once he's back out of office to be tried by the Congress for actions that took place while he was in office. But regardless, they're going to continue to try to do it. Mayor Pete has something to say about you, or something to say to you rather, and about you, because you refuse to just accept and buy the electric vehicle. From RNC Research, Pete Buttigieg disparages Americans who don't want to be forced into electric vehicles. I feel like it's the 2000s, and I'm talking to some people who think that we just can't have landline phones forever.
Tesla sales fell 8.5% the first quarter of this year. Ford this week is laying off 2/3 of its workforce at the F-150 electric Lightning plant. It's also scaling back a battery production facility because of sagging sales. EV sales are nowhere near what this president wanted or expected, yet the administration continues to shove them down consumers' throats. Why?
Well, let's be clear. Consumers have wanted and purchased more EVs every single year than the year before.
Why?
And, Tesla is facing more competition as GM and Ford and Stellantis and other competitive players start to make sure they get a piece of the EV market. Let's be clear that the automotive sector is moving toward EVs, and we can't pretend otherwise. Sometimes when these debates happen, I feel like it's the early 2000s, and I'm talking to some people who think that we can just have landline phones forever.
Tesla sales fell 8.5% the first quarter.
So there's a big difference between EVs and landline phones forever, by the way. The biggest one is the fact that people wanted cell phones. And there was a long period between the two where cell phones and landline phones intersected with each other. But hey, we still have landline phones and they're still in major usage, especially in business and commerce. Cell phones, to the extent, are, for the most part, still a supplement. They are taking over on the private sector for people's homes as more and more homes don't have a landline in them. But yeah, as far as business goes, I would say that, and this is just a guess because I don't have statistics in front of me, if I have to guess, I would say that at least 70% of commerce and business still takes place over a landline, at least on one end. But number two, the thing with cell phones is people wanted the things. And innovation made more and more people want them. And some innovation made it harder for people to live without them. I'll admit to the fact that innovations and convenience made a landline nearly useless in your home because, instead everybody went out and got a cell phone. And your 13-year-old has the cell phone as soon as the 13-year-old's old enough to start talking on the phone. Because then you don't tie up the other line while other people are waiting for a call. Whereas what they're doing with EVs with the government is they're trying to basically say, buy the EV or you won't drive. Which sounds a lot to me like they're planning on making sure that you don't drive if you don't have the EV. And if you should happen to say something, and the Beanie Boy likes to say this every once in a while, if you should happen to say something the government doesn't like on your Facebook or your X or on Discord, you get in for an emergency or just to go to the groceries, and you hear, we're sorry, but your freedom has been restricted temporarily because of untoward things that you said on X or Facebook or something else. But you didn't have to force people to get cell phones. They just went out and got them. They wanted them. They were cool. They were enjoyable. EVs are not. And even some of the first smartphones out there were too cost prohibitive, which is one of the big problems with EVs now. Like, most of us didn't get a BlackBerry because we didn't need it or didn't use it, and it was way too expensive to get when we were just making 10-button text messages and phone calls. But they were innovated and they were pushed into the market, and well, they're still extremely expensive, but we've had plenty of plans to make them out there. It's just there's not a comparison between cell phones and electric vehicles. Let's talk just a bit about Planet Fitness here. So the TLDR to this story is that libs of TikTok pointed out a commercial that Planet Fitness put out and called for the boycott, and suddenly there are bomb threats to Planet Fitness. Guys, if there are bomb threats to a business after libs of TikTok were out there, it was Democrats who were putting them out there. We saw them do that with the Bud Light or with Target after the boycotts over there over the transgender stuff, and it was the transgender people who were bomb threatening Target because they were caving to the Republican demands. Dual Helix says, as soon as they say, let's be clear, you know they're going to start spouting some BS. Yes, they do. Let's read just a little bit of this one here. A resurfaced Planet Fitness TV commercial has gone viral following conservative boycott of the gym chain over its non-discrimination policy for transgenders. Shared to X on Wednesday by libs of TikTok, the commercial shows a Planet Fitness worker misgendering a female bodybuilder while showing her around the gym. We'll finish our tour with locker rooms, the employee says in the ad. Seemingly unsure of which locker room the new sign-up should use, he tells her after you. No, after you, she replies, with the employee awkwardly walking towards the men's facilities, the one cost indicating he'd made the wrong choice. Had a tickle in my throat, she says, unimpressed, before the employee looks away and mutters, I don't know which one you're supposed to use. Since being shared to the platform, the post has received over 2.8 million views. Though there was no date on the post and clips of the commercial are difficult to find, the commercial features actress and fitness model Jane Turka. According to IMDb, she appeared in a Planet Fitness commercial in 2012. Turka is best known for her role as Miss Man from the first Scary Movie film. The 61-year-old portrayed a man pretending to be a female gym teacher in order to gain access to students. Newsweek has reached out to Planet Fitness for comment via email. And of course, with libs of TikTok, it's not libs of TikTok pointing out and just spying on these people. It's libs of TikTok putting out videos of things that the people did. But one of the things that I've noticed is there's always a bomb threat following something that libs of TikTok does. And there's either just some serial mass bomb threater who obsessively follows libs of TikTok, or more likely, they're calling in their own bomb threats because, well, it gets them attention and tries to get libs of TikTok shut down for endangering people. Media Matters, which I don't typically use here, reporting in early March, the account libs of TikTok initiated an ongoing campaign against Planet Fitness, demanding a boycott in retaliation for the gym's trans-inclusive locker room policy. Although the company's share prices appear to have largely recovered, at least 43 locations have reported hoax bomb threats in recent weeks, continuing what has been a trend of violent threats against institutions targeted by the account. Libs of TikTok's campaign against Planet Fitness began after a member of the gym's Fairbanks, Alaska location reached out with a complaint about a man shaving in a woman's bathroom. As the post gained traction, Planet Fitness released a statement reiterating the gym's trans-inclusive policy and urging staff to address discomfort and foster a climate of understanding. The gym also clarified that the member who posted on social media violated a mobile device policy that prohibits taking photos of individuals in the locker rooms, which is a regular at gyms. I don't know how so many gym thoughts get away with it, but on March 20th, libs of TikTok cited a Daily Mail story to claim that the account's activism has resulted in a $400 million loss in value for the gym. Right-wing media took their cue from libs of TikTok, peppering further anti-trans rhetoric, and sometimes invoking backlash that followed Bud Light's partnership with trans influencer Mulvaney, as they repeated the story across cable news, online outlets, and podcasts. Yeah, you can't decide where your money goes, and if you do, you're apparently a bigot according to Media Matters. Alright, let's do just a couple more here. I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to make a one-off video for this. And I'm going to skip this one entirely. So we got two more. John Bolton saying exactly what you expect John Bolton to say. Caitlin Collins sharing it out too. Thank you to the Libertarian Redhead, my former co-host Elaine, by the way, for sharing this one out. John Bolton. I might as well say it now. I voted for Cheney in 2020, and I'll vote for Cheney again this November. We know. And that was Dick Cheney, not Liz Cheney. We know. Because you can't live in a world where all this peace is breaking out. Let's listen to John Bolton.
And focus on the 2020 election that's obviously obsessing Trump because he can't admit that he lost, will cost Republicans at the ballot. I think people want to move on from 2020, even most Republicans, although they don't seem to realize it. So this concentration on what happened in the past, I think will work to Biden's advantage, and he's unpopular enough. He desperately needs it.
And you've said you're going to write someone in November.
That's what I did in 2020, and I'll do it again this November.
Who did you write in 2020? You've never revealed that before.
Well, I might as well say it now. I voted for Dick Cheney.
Wow.
And I'll vote for Dick Cheney again this November.
We know.
You'll write in Dick Cheney.
That's right.
What made you write him in?
Because he was a principled Reaganite conservative, and he still is.
Because he wants to go bomb Iran.
Age is no longer a factor in American presidential politics, so his age doesn't disqualify him, and I think he'd do an immensely better job than either Trump or Biden.
What about his daughter, Liz Cheney?
Well, I like Liz a lot, and maybe someday she'll get my write-in vote too, but right
because she wants to go bomb Iran.
Now I'll stick with her father.
I mean, people should know that's news right now. You've never revealed who you wrote in 2020 before.
Well, I hope it sways the electorate and prevents both Trump and Biden from being the successful candidate. And if I could start a nationwide write-in campaign for Dick Cheney, maybe I should do that.
This is why populism is on the decline, or why they're trying to get populism out. Because Democrats have become the party of the war, and Republicans have become the party of peace, and people like John Bolton can't handle that. All right, and the last one on things that I hate. From NPC News. Biden admin seeks to close the gun show loophole to buy firearms. From Gabe Gutierrez and Diana Paulson. In what could be the biggest expansion of federal background checks in decades, the Biden admin is moving to end the controversial gun show loophole that doesn't exist. The single gap in our federal background check system has caused unimaginable pain and suffering, said Vice President Harris, in spite of the fact that all the mass shootings that they focus on were all bought at a licensed gun dealer within 2 days of the purchase with a waived background check. By somebody who was on the FBI's radar. On Thursday, the Justice Department will submit a new 466-page regulation to the Federal Register outlining that the ATF will require anyone engaged in the business of selling guns at a profit to register as a federally licensed firearms dealer and run a background criminal and mental health check on buyers. So, what this means, by the way, the new rule would include those selling guns not only at gun shows, but at flea markets and online. Additionally, the definition of being engaged in business has been expanded to include those who sell a small number of firearms. However, the exceptions will be maintained for those selling private collections and family heirlooms. No, that's what they say, but that's not going to be the case. Now, number one, if you are selling a firearm at a gun show, you are a federal firearms licensed dealer already, because you can't sell at a gun show without being one. That's number one, unless you're doing a private sale in the back alley, which may or may not be legal depending on your state, but you are not doing it on the floor, on a table, without having an FFL already. But that is where they're going with this. If you buy a Smith & Wesson SV9 for $300 and you sell it for $301, You've sold for a profit, which means that you are to this rule. Which again, it all comes down to registry. That's the end goal of all gun control in this country, a registry. So when they do come down to do the confiscations, they know who has what gun and where. Especially with inflation going the way that it is. There are very few people who are going to, if at 27% inflation, buying a gun and then selling it at a loss. I know that my Smith & Wesson costs more than what I paid for it. I know for a fact it costs more than what I paid for it. And I could turn around and sell it for more. But then I would need to be a federally licensed firearms dealer to do so. Which, I mean, that wouldn't be hard. There's one in the family, but still. The end result is always a registry. Making sure that the federal government and the ATF knows what gun is where, in whose hands, when, and how. End of story. They say the gun show loophole, they say private sales, background checks, etc. That's all that they want to do, is know what is where. On an item that should never be registered to begin with, the government has no business knowing what firearms that I have, when, and where. So, that's why I hate that, and with that, I'm going to call it a day. I know I'm rambling a little bit. I only slept like 3 hours last night. And I got really, really rambling on the finance segment because that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about is finance. Because I think that's going to be the driver, that should be the driver of what our elections are, not abortion and gays getting married and dogs and cats living together. But because I only got 3 hours of sleep and I got to call my mom back yet tonight, let's get the hell out of here. I know you should probably go enjoy your families too. And we hit the 2.5 hour mark tonight, so let's find some outro music and let's go. Where is my outro music? I played it the other night. Did I restart since then? I don't think so. Oh, I might have closed it just because it was playing while I was trying to listen to somebody play on Twitch. Oh, the song changeover on the Video Game Study Lounge actually hit at the right time. We didn't have any crossover, and I know that triggers long. Alright, but with that, we're going to head out of here for the night. Thanks everybody who came by and hung out and chatted with me. I'll be back here tomorrow night for Fallout Fridays. We'll have some fun with that. We'll go back into the Commonwealth. I think we're going to start Point Lookout tomorrow night. And then we'll go do that DLC, and then we'll probably end run to the end of the game, taking a small detour, of course, to take out all the raiders in Nuka World once I have the strength and the perks to do so. But that'll be a few weeks in the making as well. And depending on how hard I have to work on Saturday, what I have going on with that, I am probably going to run an impromptu stream on Saturday, and we'll probably finish up or get goddamn close to it, Final Fantasy X. I know I'll be able to run a little bit longer because there's no possibility of going back to work on Sunday. So yeah, we can probably do that for a little bit and finish out. Then we can start a new game next Wednesday, although it probably won't be the next full game we're going to play. I think we're going to run a character through Diablo 2 just to have some mindless hack and slash fun, while I also take some time and experiment to make sure I know how my capture card works, because I want to do that. But that is all things for the future. Thanks to everybody so much who came by, chatted, hung out. It's been a great time. It was a great stream, even if I did get a little bit tired and ranty. Stick around if you're on the Twitch side for the raid. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Take care. Have a fantastic night. Hug your family. Get some food. Find some friends. And until next time, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.